Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to NAUI's Dive Team Report. I'm your host, Greg Martin. Anybody who has listened to the podcast in the last couple of years knows that, like many of you, I was inspired by a lot of different things, including the television show Sea Hunt. I've also mentioned other primary inspirations came from the horror classic The Creature from the Black Lagoon, shows like Thunderball, and the Disney classic Jules Verne 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Well, guess what? All those things have one thing in common, and that is this week's NAUI Dive Team Report guest, Ricou Browning. Ricou, it is an honor to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Well, good. Did you take diving up as just a hobby, or how did you get into the world of diving?
I was a very young person, and I worked at a place called Wakulla Springs. And the manager of the hotel, Newt Perry, was a good diver. And he taught us how to breathe from an air hose. So we just dove and dived in the springs with an air hose, breathing like you take water from a hose to drink.
Sure.
And what you don't drink, you let it spill out. Well, the same way with hose breathing. You breathe in the air, and what you don't want, you just let it bubble out. And that's how I learned to dive, was with air hoses.
Interesting. Then did you go on and have a regular scuba certification class at some point, or was it just vicarious that you got into that?
No, it's a very funny story. I was diving for years and did shows like Sea Hunt and the shows you mentioned. And then I kind of retired. And I wanted to go free diving and just have fun. I went down to a dive shop to get my tanks filled, and he wouldn't fill them because I wasn't certified. And my daughter, who got certified, had to go get air for me. Later, I became certified, but for years, I was never certified. So.
Well, I need to ask a couple of questions here because I am such a huge fan of course, of The Creature and Thunderball. You've been quoted as saying that there are a lot more shows that you're far more proud of than The Creature, but it seems to always get all the attention. Why do you think that is? Was it because it was the first of its kind?
I don't really know, but I'm happy it is because I go to shows now and sign autographs, and have fun doing that with the fans. But I don't really know what the answer is to that.
I do have a couple quick questions about The Creature, though. Something I've always wondered. Was that all breath hold diving?
Yeah, I breathed from an air hose, and I had 4 safety people. One would hand me the air hose, and I'd breathe, and when the cameraman gave me the signal to go into the scene, I'd give him the air hose back, go into the scene, do the scene, holding my breath, and then when I finished the scene, I would get a hose from another safety person. And I had a signal with them that if I went totally limp, that meant I need air, because I was always moving my hands or something, and swimming or fighting. But if I went totally limp, it was a signal to say, bring me some air. And I used it a number of times, and it worked fine, and we never had a problem.
Well, what was the visibility like with that suit on?
That was one of the worst things. The eye of the suit sat about an inch from my eye, and it was like looking through a keyhole. And I couldn't wear a face mask because it bulged out too far. And I tried wearing goggles, but the problem was when the goggles filled with air, with water, I mean, there was no way to get rid of the water out of the goggles. So I just went with the naked eye. And as you know, swimming with a naked eye, things are blurred, and looking through a keyhole, it's even more blurred. So that was one of the worst things, was vision.
Let's jump over to something a little bigger, maybe. I was always fascinated by the movie Thunderball and that huge underwater fight scene. How did you manage to keep all of those people straight, divers, actors, stunt people, whatever, underwater like that?
Well, it was difficult. We had a huge barge, And we rehearsed the scenes on top of the barge and talk about what we were going to do. And then we'd go underwater and attempt to do it. And if we failed, we'd come back up on the barge and rehearse it again, and then go back in the water and shoot it again. And I used a great number of people from diving schools throughout the state of Florida as some of the divers. And I had my original divers, about 13 of them I use in all the shows I work on. They were also working with the other people and helping them. And it just took a lot of time, a lot of effort, but it was a lot of fun, and we had a lot of fun doing it.
So what do you consider, Ricou, your greatest challenge, perhaps, either as an actor or as a director?
I guess as a director, because I didn't acting things underwater other than the ones we talked about. I directed for about 50 years and been quite successful.
You know, they always say don't work with kids and animals, but you've spent a lot of your time working with kids and animals like Flipper.
Yeah, I did a show, Flipper, and we always said ABC. Don't work with ABC, animals, boats, and children.
Yeah.
And a lot of the shows, we had all of them in every show. So it is difficult working with animals, boats, and children.
So let me ask you briefly here before we let you go. Is this what you wanted to do when you grew up?
No, I wanted to be a doctor. And I went to college at Florida State University. And I flunked chemistry. And so I changed my major and went into physical education. And then later went into the Air Force and was a physical training instructor. Interesting.
And it sort of changed its course on you, right?
Yeah, right.
Are you still diving today? Do you still dive?
Yeah, in the bathtub.
In the bathtub?
Yeah.
We all do that when we get brand new gear. We take it in the bathtub and try it on.
Yeah. No, I go every now and then for fun, but not often.
How do you think the diving industry has changed in the last, how many years? 40, 50, 60 years?
Well, one thing is a diver wears so much equipment, it's unbelievable. You know, we used to just wear a tank, an arrow, a tank, and a lung, and a weight belt, and that's it. And then all of a sudden, they start putting all this junk on you, and you're overweighted, everything is just too much.
So you think there needs to be some simplification, perhaps?
I do, yeah. Because all you need is air. And if you know how to get the air, you're going to be all right. And if the tank goes empty, you know it ahead of time because it gets hard to breathe and you go up. And I don't know, it seems like it's too much equipment.
It does seem that. Those of us that are cold water divers know that there is such a thing as too much equipment with dry suits and everything. It's difficult.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you so much, first off, for bringing all of these things to us all these years. Yes, I am a big Creature from the Black Lagoon fan, and I can't thank you enough for a wonderful character. I learned to swim by watching the Creature from the Black Lagoon. People still think I'm crazy by doing that, but it's just the way I am. But thanks for giving us those great shows and characters.
Well, you're sure welcome. And thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. If you like what you hear on the podcast, by all means, drop me an email, podcast@naui.org. If you'd like to learn about scuba diving, be sure and visit your local NAUI Dive Shop. And that's this episode of NAUI's Dive Team Report. I can't thank Ricou Browning enough for joining us today. Ricou, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
I'm Greg Martin. Thank you for listening. I'll see you underwater.